The tear heard. Across two worlds, the parchment glowed in his hand, warm, humming, unnaturally alive. It wasn't made of paper nor anything remotely Earth-like. It pulsed like it had a heartbeat of its own, echoing with alien lore older than any human civilization. 100 alien eyes watched him in complete silence. Commander Elias Creed stood at the center of the Hall of Accord, a circular, sky-lit chamber suspended in orbit above an emerald planet that no human had ever set foot on. 10 towering officials lined the outer ring, their robes brushing the floor, each one representing a house that controlled a section of the Zurellan Empire. At the far end, on a throne carved from obsidian crystal, sat Queen Virea, tall, composed, terrifying in her beauty, not because of her alien features, translucent skin laced with glowing veins, silver eyes that reflected your emotions back at you, but because of her calm certainty. The way she looked at him was not hostile, but expectant. Like she had already decided the ending of this moment. "You may sign," she said, voice smooth as drifting smoke, "and the bonding shall begin." The parchment flared brighter in his grip, heat intensifying with every second he didn't move, as if it wanted him to comply, to seal the deal with a signature, a drop of blood, and a bow. His jaw tightened, his fingers flexed. Everyone in the chamber leaned forward. Elias smiled. Then he tore the contract in half, deliberately, slowly, like he wanted every soul present to feel it. Gasps rang out, some human, most not. The shredded pieces of the royal reproductive. Accord fluttered down like wounded stars and evaporated into glowing dust before they could touch the floor. The silence was immediate and deadly. Elias turned his gaze to the Queen. "I don't belong to anyone," he said. "Not you. Not your empire, not your law." Queen Virea didn't flinch. Her silver eyes blinked once, then she stood. Slowly, from her elevated platform, she looked not at her court, not at her advisors, not even at the guards now stepping forward, but directly at Elias. "You have invoked the trial clause." The chamber erupted in alarm. "Impossible," someone shouted from the left. "That law was abolished," another hissed. "No human has ever... No one dares call upon it," boomed a larger official, his robes shaking with fury. Elias didn't move. "Trial clause?" he asked, eyes narrowing. "I didn't say anything about a trial." Queen Virea descended. The stairs, her bare feet making no sound. When she reached him, she stopped barely inches away. "You tore the accord. In this chamber, before witnesses, that act alone revives the clause." "What exactly does it mean?" Elias asked. Virea leaned in, voice low. "It means you do not become my partner by contract. You must earn it, through the ancient rite of ordeal. One no human has survived." He chuckled softly. "Sounds fair?" She didn't smile. Hours later, Elias sat alone in a chamber he hadn't seen before, part laboratory, part shrine. Pale crystal tubes hummed around him. One wall was filled with symbols he couldn't read. Another held sketches that looked like anatomy diagrams of both human and alien forms intertwined. He rubbed his temples. His heart was still hammering from what he'd done. Tear up an alien queen's binding contract in front of her council. Smart move, Commander. The door hissed open. Queen Virea entered, alone. He stood, watching her carefully. "Let me guess. This is the part where you tell me I've made a terrible mistake." But she shook her head. "No, this is the part where I ask you why you did it." He hesitated. "Because your council sees humans as tools, breeders, assets, not people." She folded her arms. "And yet I chose you. Did you?" His eyes burned. "Or did your algorithms choose me because my DNA's a 98.7% match for whatever weird gene prophecy your house believes in?" Her silence confirmed enough. He stepped closer. "You want a partner? Start by treating me like more than a genetic investment." Viraya didn't flinch, but for the first time, her gaze wavered. "I didn't want the contract," she admitted, "but the court demanded it. My advisors, they believe you can stabilize our kind." Elias tilted his head. "Stabilize you? What, like an alien breeding program?" Her lips twitched with something like pain. "It's not just about survival, it's about unlocking memory, shared memory. Our people lost something long ago, something vital. The trial may awaken it, in you, in me. So I'm a living key. You are more than that," she said softly now. "You are familiar." That word hung in the air like a ghost. Elias didn't know how to respond to it. Viraya walked past him, placing a hand on a silver control orb embedded in the wall. The symbols flickered to life, one by one, forming a door made of light. Behind it, a long chamber appeared, empty, silent, except for the hum of something old powering it. "This is where your trial begins," she said. "There will be 3 stages, mental, emotional, and something else." "Something else?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to face him again. "If you fail," she said, "they'll kill you, but that's not what matters." "Then what does?" "If you fail," she hesitated, "I will pay the price, not just politically, not just genetically, but personally." He stepped toward her. "Why?" She looked at him, silver eyes softer than he'd ever seen. "Because I remember Amanda a long time ago. One who stood in this chamber and said the exact same words you did today. What happened to him? I betrayed him," she whispered, "and I've been trying to bring him back ever since." A long silence followed. Elias slowly turned toward the light door, his thoughts racing. No more jokes, no more sarcasm. The air had changed. This wasn't about genetics anymore. It wasn't even about politics. It was about something deeper, forgotten, buried. And somehow, it was tied to him. As he stepped through the door, it closed behind him without a sound. The room dimmed, the walls shifted, and the world around him disappeared into shadow, echoes of a man who shouldn't exist. The moment Elias stepped through the light door, the world bent sideways. Sound vanished. Sight dissolved. Time lost meaning. Then impact. He dropped to his knees in what looked like a vast chamber of glass. Light refracted endlessly in every direction, bouncing off mirrored surfaces, each one reflecting himself. But not just himself. Versions of himself. Elias stood slowly, watching in awe and confusion as the mirrored chambers lit up, each one showing a different Elias creed. One wore an old Earth military uniform, face streaked with ash and blood. Another stood aboard a starship he didn't recognize, whispering something to a crew that wasn't there. A third wore alien robes, Zurellan no doubt, with Queen Viraya beside him. But she was laughing, happy, alive in a way she never was. "Back in the real world, what is this?" he muttered. A voice responded, not aloud, but inside his mind. "Welcome to the Mind Crucible. Phase 1, Echo Reconciliation. Objective, identify the Origin Echo." Origin Echo. The chamber pulsed, and the floor beneath him lit up, forming a glowing ring. A new mirror ignited before him, this time not a reflection. It was memory. He saw a boy, himself, young, frightened, locked in a containment pod on Lunar Base, screaming for a mother who never came. The door to the pod sealed shut by men in military garb, men he would one day work for. He staggered backward. "No, that's not real." "Incorrect. All memories retrieved from neural anchor. Your past is fragmented. Your present is distorted. Your echo determines your fate." More mirrors lit up, faster now, each slamming into place like a judge's gavel, a version of Elias rescuing a dying alien child from a human raid, another standing trial before an Earth tribunal for sympathizing with extraterritorials. One mirror showed him kissing Queen Viraya in a garden of glowing vines. He backed away. "None of this makes sense. I never lived these." That is incorrect. You lived one of these lives, but your mind was sealed, fragmented to preserve stability. The contract was designed to choose the echo most stable. You disrupted the pattern. Now you must face the echo you rejected. A final mirror appeared, and this one wasn't still. This Elias stood in a Zurellan laboratory hooked up to machines, his face calm, eyes blank, surrounded by alien scientists and Virea herself, who was crying as she typed commands into a console. Terminate. Subject if synchronization fails, a voice said off-screen. No, she whispered in the memory. Please, he's not ready. Not again. The mirror shattered. Elias screamed, clutching his head as static filled his mind. He awoke, lying flat, on something soft, no mirrors. No lights, just silence and Virea sitting at his side. Phase 1 completed, she said softly. He sat up, groggy. What? What the hell was that? She didn't meet his eyes. The crucible accesses not just your memory, but our genetic lineage. Our people believe soul lineages echo across timelines. I told you before, I remembered you. That wasn't metaphor. You think I'm someone who's lived this before? He asked, voice low. No, she said. I think you were always him. But the human military sealed your mind, removed your access to what we tried to share. Elias stared at her, rage flickering. You mean they knew? About you? About this whole bond thing? She nodded. They were afraid, she said. Not of me. Of you, the first human whose neural resonance matched Zurellan frequency, a living key, one who could bridge what was broken. Bridge what? He demanded. You keep talking like I'm part of some prophecy. Not prophecy, she whispered. Consequence. She reached into a satchel and pulled out a small, dark crystal. It shimmered faintly as she held it. Outer, this is your second trial, she said. The emotional fold. Elias hesitated. What's it do? It shows you one thing you never wanted to face. He took the crystal. It pulsed in his palm. Darkness fell instantly. He was back. Earth. 20 years ago. A white hallway, alarms blaring, fires crackling. He ran down a corridor, heart racing, smoke filling his lungs. Behind a shattered wall, 2 figures. His sister Maya, barely conscious, and a man, his commanding officer, pulling her by the wrist. No! Elias screamed. Let her go! The man looked back, face hard, unmoved. She's not real anymore, Creed. They used her body. It's a clone. Run! But Elias didn't run. He dove for her, grabbing her hand, and watched, helpless, as a plasma bolt struck her in the back. She collapsed, gone. The scream he let out was one he'd buried so deep he didn't know it existed until now. When the memory faded, he stood there sobbing, and Virea's voice reached him again, gentle. She wasn't a clone. He froze. I've seen the record. The Zurellan database keeps imprints of all subjects tested near resonance anomalies. Maya Creed wasn't cloned. She had the same markers you have. Elias looked up. Then why did they say, to make you compliant, she said softly, to sever your emotions? They needed you angry, controlled, obedient. He clenched. His fists, they lied to me. Yes, she said, and now you must decide what to do with that pain. The crystal crumbled in his hand like ash. Back in the chamber, Virea stood watching him, her gaze softer now, but distant. You're not the first human to resist the accord, she said, but you're the first who refused both paths, the contract and the assimilation. I don't want to be a tool, Elias said. Not for your people, not for mine. She nodded. Then your final trial begins now. A circular platform emerged from the floor, rising between them. It shimmered, pale light twisting into a whirlpool of stars. What is it? He asked. Virea stepped forward. A neural bond, voluntary, not forced. He raised an eyebrow. What's the catch? If you enter it, she said quietly, you will see my truth, all of it. My shame, my sins, my failures, you will know what I've done, what I lost and why I brought you here. He stepped toward the platform. I'm not afraid of your past, but she stopped him with a hand on his chest. You should be, she whispered. Then she stepped onto the platform herself. The room collapsed into light. Suddenly, he was her. He felt her pain, centuries of burden. Watching her people fracture after the great collapse, watching humans arrive like flickering shadows, full of potential and fire and fear. He saw her first bonding attempt with a man who looked like him but wasn't. He failed, rejected the process, died screaming as his mind shattered. She held his body. She screamed for him to come back. The High Council told her to erase him. She refused. She kept a sample of his DNA, hoping, waiting, until one day, Elias. Greed appeared in their records. Same markers, same spark, same fire. And she dared to believe. Back in reality, he gasped and stumbled, collapsing to one knee. Viraya knelt beside him. You know now, she said. Everything. He looked up, eyes full of something that wasn't anger anymore, or pain. I understand now, he said. You didn't want a soldier, or a breeder. You wanted a second chance. She nodded. He stood, slower this time. The trial chamber dimmed, the final test complete. The walls shimmered, and a door appeared behind them. But before they could move, a voice crackled through. The intercom. Subject Creed has passed unauthorized neural fusion. Proceed with extraction protocol. Elias turned sharply. What the hell is that? Viraya's face paled. They're going to erase you. Countdown initiated. 10, 9, 8. A panel slid open in the wall. Armed guards flooded in, both human and Zarellan, weapons drawn. Elias looked at Viraya. Then I guess the trials aren't over yet. The man who wasn't supposed to wake up reality tore apart. One instant, soldiers poured into the trial chamber, human and Zarellan alike. Their weapons buzzed with charged energy, eyes locked on Elias Creed. The next, they froze. Mid-step, mid-breath, suspended, like someone had pressed pause on a universe that no longer wanted to cooperate. Only Elias moved now, his fist clenched. Around the crushed neural chip, its red glow still pulsing between his fingers. What just happened? He gasped, his voice echoing through the warped chamber. Viraya stood like a statue, mouth half open, eyes wide in surprise, but unmoving. Elias stumbled backward. Viraya? No response. A soft hum filled the air. Then a presence, not a voice, not a shape, just awareness. Welcome back, Elias Creed. Temporal override authorized. Local space now operating at phase 6-fold. His mind reeled. The air shimmered with data. Strings of alien symbols and military ciphers scrolling across the frozen space like code in a dream. You were never meant to remember. You were never meant to reach this point. Who are you? He demanded. No answer. Instead, a hollow chime echoed, and the floor beneath him restructured, tiles flipping, folding, rearranging themselves into a corridor that hadn't existed seconds before. At the far end was a black door. Its surface swirled like ink in water. Familiar. Too familiar. You are the echo that resisted. It is time to see what they buried. Elias walked. The corridor narrowed with every step, pressing memory against him like weights on his chest. He remembered. None of this, and yet he did. Images returned in fragments. A younger Elias, strapped to a chair in a dark human lab. Wires threading into his skull. Zarellan resonance data flooding his mind. Screams, not his. A girl's voice. Maya? No. Viraya. Another flash. Zarellan council members watching his neural patterns destabilize. One of them shaking her head. Two. Volatile, too human, he can't bond. Then Viraya again, screaming at them. We don't need control, we need trust. Let him choose. They didn't listen, so she did the unthinkable. She made him forget. The corridor ended. The black door loomed before him, swirling with energy. And he knew. This was the lock. The truth was behind it. He reached out, and the door opened on its own. Inside it was quiet, a single room, sterile and bright. A stasis pod sat at the center, covered in frost. Tubes connected it to a humming console lined with blinking glyphs. Both human and Zurellan tech fused together. Elias approached it. The figure inside looked just like him. No, it was him, sleeping, peaceful, almost serene, and suddenly he understood everything. He wasn't Elias Creed. Not in the way he thought. He was a copy, a failsafe. The real Elias, the original, was here, preserved, untouched, too dangerous to wake, and the chip he crushed earlier, it had disconnected this backup body from the suppression matrix, the false memories, the restraints that made him compliant. "Why show me this now?" he whispered. The answer came not in words, but in emotion. Because the original is dying. And you are the only one who can finish what he started. A soft sound came from behind. He turned quickly. Viraya stood there, alive and moving again. She was shaking. Her lips parted, like she didn't want to speak the truth. "You weren't supposed to find this room," she said softly. "Not yet." "You lied to me," Elias said, voice low. "All of this, every step, it was about keeping me contained." Viraya looked at the stasis pod. Her expression cracked with emotion. "I loved him, the real Elias. We tried the bond once before. It failed. It nearly killed him." He stared at her. "So you made a copy, one that wouldn't fight back?" "No," she said quickly. "That was your government's idea, not mine. I tried to save what was left of you, of him." He circled the pod, breath tight. "Why? Why keep me alive at all?" "Because I hoped. One day you'd wake up, remember who you were, choose us, not because a contract demanded it, but because you felt the truth." He stared at the original Elias, so still, so close. Then he looked at his own hands. "I'm not even real," he whispered. "You're more than real," she said, stepping closer. "You're the version of him that still believes we can change." He turned to her, eyes sharp. "And what happens if I don't agree with your accord? What happens if I reject all of it?" She hesitated, then said, "Then I let you go." "No threat, no manipulation, just raw truth." He narrowed his eyes. "You swear?" "I do." A silence settled between them, waited, alive. He glanced back at the console. "If I wake him up, what happens to me?" Her lips trembled. "You'll merge, a beat, or vanish." Elias stepped away from the pod and sat on the floor. Conflicted, broken, free. 2 hours passed. They spoke, not about politics, not about genetic contracts or ancient wars or psychic harmonization, just talked. About Earth, about Zurella, about fear and failure and hope. And when it was quiet again, Elias stood. "You asked me to choose." Viraya nodded. He looked at the pod one last time and said, "I choose now." He turned to the console and deactivated the stasis field. Lights flared. The real Elias gasped inside the pod, eyes fluttering open. The backup, our Elias, fell to his knees, clutching his chest. His form flickered, faded. Viraya screamed. "Elias!" He looked up at her through flickering light. No regrets, and vanished. The real Elias Creed stepped from the pod, breathing hard, confused, but alive. He looked at Viraya, his voice gravelly. "You look tired." She fell into his arms and whispered, "You have no idea elsewhere." In orbit, a military vessel blinked into stealth mode above the atmosphere. Inside, a human commander stared at a blinking warning on his screen. Subject, Creed, original. Status, active protocol. Raise, he tapped the comms. Target confirmed. Begin strike countdown, Earth's final order. The sky split open. A needle of white fire screamed downward from orbit, so blinding it turned day into something unnatural. A pause before impact. Elias barely had time to react. "Move!" he shouted, grabbing Verea's arm as the world erupted. The missile hit the hillside where the hidden facility lay, turning metal, rock, and trees into vapor. A shockwave exploded outward, swallowing the corridor they'd just left, crumpling steel like paper. Verea activated a defense sphere around them, a shimmering energy field barely strong enough to hold. The blast roared past them. Debris pelted the shield. Light burned through the seams. Elias held her tight. Then, silence. Dust hung in the air. The facility was gone. Where once there had been secrets, stasis pods, and hidden truths, there was now only a crater. They staggered out. Elias coughed, lungs full of heat and dust. The ground beneath him still vibrated with aftershock. "Tell me that wasn't your people," he rasped. Verea's eyes glowed faintly as she scanned the wreckage. "No Zorellan weapon makes that kind of signature." Then Elias saw it. A ship, descending through the smoke, sleek, Earth-made, matte black hull bearing no insignia, Earth's shadow directive. His old training flooded back. Black-class military, no politics, no diplomacy, just absolute execution. Inside the human ship, Commander Thorne watched from the bridge as thermal scans confirmed it. Target alive. Moving. He turned to his second-in-command. "Send down the retrieval squad. If he resists, eliminate." "But, sir," she said cautiously, "that's the original Elias Creed. We spent billions trying to recover him." "He was marked compromised," Thorne said coldly. "Emotionally entangled, spiritually bonded. He's a security risk now. We don't retrieve liabilities, we remove them." He turned back to the screen. "And burn anything alien he's touched." Back. On the ground, Verea spotted the dropships coming, 3 of them low and fast. Her antennae twitched. "We don't have time, they'll bring dampeners." Elias stared into the sky, his expression unreadable. "They're not coming to talk, are they?" "No," she said. "They're here to erase." Elias clenched his fists. The anger in his chest wasn't just fear, it was betrayal. Again, all. His life, he'd been told to serve the greater good. Sacrifice, obey, sign the contract. Accept the role. Even now, when he had just woken up, they came not to speak, but to erase him from the ledger. Not this time. They ran into the forest, roots and branches whipping past, ducking low as dropships carved through the trees behind. Them. Verea tossed a small orb behind her. It pulsed once, then exploded in a wave of light that jammed sensors and scrambled drones. "We need to reach the old escape chamber," she said. "There's a teleport node buried in the cliff wall. It's not perfect, but—" Elias stopped, grabbed her hand. "No, we're not running anymore." Verea turned, confused. "You don't understand." "No, I do. This is exactly what they always planned. They made me into a weapon, then discarded me when I refused to fire." His voice was steady now, sharper, stronger. "We take a stand." "Here." Verea looked at him, searching his face, then nodded. "Then let's give them something they can't erase." 10 minutes later, the strike team landed, 12 soldiers, fully armored. Earth's most elite anti-hybrid force. They moved through the trees like ghosts, scanners sweeping, rifles primed. Target has bonded with alien, threat level, ascending. They found the first signal in a clearing, Elias's old combat ID. Tag hanging from a tree. Motion detected a sound. Then boom! The ground beneath them collapsed. A triggered seismic bomb tossed half the squad into the ravine. Roots snapped. Trees fell. Above them, on the ridge, Elias stood, his silhouette framed in smoke and fire. "You want a threat?" he shouted. "Then you better bring more than 12. What followed wasn't war. It was defiance. Verea disabled the tech dampeners with pulses from her core. Elias, drawing on his hybrid instincts and old human training, lured soldiers into false paths, misdirecting them, disabling weapons. With precision strikes they didn't kill, but they shut down everything they could. It wasn't about winning. It was about being seen, about not going quietly. Meanwhile, in orbit, Commander Thorne watched the feed flicker with interference. "Still no kill confirmation?" he growled. "No, sir," replied the technician. "They've hijacked our satellite link. Ground team's not responding. It's like they're making a scene," Thorne said bitterly. "A show for the whole system." He opened a comlink. "Preppy, the orbital lance. If we can't extract quietly, we end this publicly." Back on the ridge, Virea's breathing was heavy. "We can't hold them off much longer." Elias checked the sky. The clouds had parted. A vertical shaft of light was forming in the atmosphere. He recognized the pattern. "Orbital lance," he muttered. Her eyes widened. "That's a planetary strike. They'd rather scorch the land than let us speak." He looked down at her. Really. Looked, not as an alien, not as a diplomatic bondmate, but as a person who had risked everything to let him choose. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small black device. It hummed faintly. "Then it's time to let them hear me." He turned. On the world broadcast chip, something meant to be activated only in extreme emergencies. Within seconds, his voice rang across satellites, government systems, and Zurellan council servers. "My name is Elias Creed. I was your test subject, your experiment. You tried to break me, then replace me. I have remembered everything, and I have one thing to say. I am done obeying. The Accord is a lie, a peace built on subjugation. You didn't want partnership, you wanted silence. Well, here's my voice, and it's louder than ever. Across Earth, the message played. On news feeds, encrypted military channels, public holograms. People paused. Soldiers halted. Council members gasped. The system, so carefully balanced between species, began to tremble. In the orbital ship, Commander Thorne stared at the countdown timer. 10 seconds left. He could override it, end the strike, but if he did, he'd be labeled a traitor. He closed his eyes. Could he destroy someone just for remembering who they were? Back on Earth, Elias turned to Virea. "If this is it," he said, "then at least we stood." But Virea wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were glowing bright blue. "No," she whispered. "This isn't it." She pressed her hands to the soil. The ground rippled. A pulse shot into the sky. A call. Not to Earth, not to Zarella, but to something older. Something watching. Something sleeping. Something awakening. The third signal. The sky cracked. Not from Earth's weapons. Not from Zurellan tech, but from something older, deeper, a frequency not heard in millennia. Above the incoming orbital lance, a rip formed in the fabric of space, silent at first, then humming with a sound that bypassed the ears and went straight to the bones. Virea's eyes flared electric blue. Elias turned to her, stunned. "You called something," he breathed. "What is it?" She stared upward, barely blinking. "It's not something we made. It's something we woke." In orbit, Commander Thorne stood frozen as every console on the bridge of his ship dimmed. Red lights flickered, then unauthorized interference detected, source unknown. "Who's in our system?" he barked. No one answered. His crew stared upward at the external view. Above them floated an object, a being, a ship. No one knew. It looked like an obsidian eye, wreathed in stars, a sphere with fractal geometry shifting constantly, as though space itself recoiled. From trying to define it, then it spoke, not with words, but with images, emotions, pulses of memory. "Cease." Back on Earth, Elias dropped to one knee, overwhelmed. For a split second, he wasn't on the ridge. He was everywhere, a child on a dying colony, a soldier begging for peace, a test subject in cryostasis, a voice erased, then remembered. He gasped. "That thing, it showed me my life. All of it. Even parts I didn't know." Virea was trembling. "It's not here to fight, it's here to judge." "Judge who?" Elias asked. Us? Her voice lowered. No, everyone. In the Zurellan Core Council, thousands of light years away, every terminal went black. Then a single message appeared in ancient script, older than their civilization. Balance has been broken. Violation of the accord will be reviewed. Prepare for... In presence, councillors stared at one another in panic. They weren't supposed to be real, one of them whispered. They were always real, said another. We just forgot. Back at the ridge, the orbital lance charged again, but instead of firing, it froze midstream. Time itself seemed to slow. The stars above bent inward, and then the being descended. Not with fire, not with weapons, but with stillness. It hovered, meters above Elias and Virea, its skin reflecting 1,000 moments of their lives in flickering flashes, like a living mirror of their truths. And then a voice echoed inside Elias's mind. Not human, not alien, something between. You broke the contract, yet you chose. That is rare. Suddenly they were inside it. No ship, no body, just awareness, a white field, a horizonless space where thoughts moved like sound. Virea floated beside Elias, her form glowing with energy. Then others appeared, humans and Zurellans both, ghosts of past Accord trials, all staring silently. Then the final trial began. The being spoke. The Accord was meant for coexistence, but it became a mask. One side suppressed, the other bent into silence. Yet two minds, one born to obey, the other born to rule, tore it apart by choosing each other freely. Explain yourselves. Elias stepped forward. No one asked us. No one ever asked what we wanted. They gave us contracts instead of choices. He looked at Virea. I didn't bond with her because of a treaty. I chose her because when everything collapsed, she stood by me, not because she had to, because she wanted to. Virea stepped forward too. My people punished me for refusing to dominate. Yours punished you for remembering who you were. She reached for Elias's hand. Our bond isn't about power. It's about truth. Silence followed. Then, the being pulsed once. Every ghost faded. The space shimmered. Then the voice said, judgment rendered. Back on the ridge, time snapped back. The clouds split again, but this time not with fire. The orbital weapon, melted in orbit, turned to drifting dust. Commander Thorne, watching from his ship, gasped as systems returned. All weapons were disabled. His console blinked a final message. Interference acknowledged. Protocol. Human autonomy restored. Thorne slumped in his chair, pale. They've reset everything. Earth hours later, global feeds went live with images of the encounter. The being had vanished, but not before leaving behind a single signal. A rewritten accord. One line, translated into every known language. No soul shall be bound without consent, Elias. And Virea stood in a medical center near the old border zone. A small child, Zurellan-human hybrid, smiled at them as her vitals stabilized. She wouldn't have survived the old contract protocols, said the doctor. Her DNA, it was too mixed, too free. Elias grinned faintly. Maybe freedom isn't the problem. Later, Virea stood at the edge of a cliff. The stars were quiet now. Still, Elias walked up beside her. I'm not a soldier anymore, he said. Not a subject, not an experiment. She looked at him. Then what are you? He smiled. Something no contract ever accounted for. He held out his hand again. And this time she took it, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The final accord. The vault opened, not with a sound, not with fire, just a flicker, like a forgotten memory reigniting in the dark. Somewhere in the uncharted depths of the galaxy, near a dead sun orbiting a black world, the vault's mechanism stirred for the first time in 40,000 years. Inside were records, genetic contracts, experiments, failures, hybrids. One by one they dissolved, and in their place, A pulse, a frequency not heard since before the first accord. The third species had awoken, Earth. 5 days later, every major world government had gone silent. No wars, no broadcasts, no ships launched. Only one message was being transmitted, awaiting. Contact. Virea stood with Elias on the new coalition summit grounds, where former Zarellan and human leaders now walked side by side, uneasy but unified. "You feel it, don't you?" she said. He nodded. "They're not like us, or you, or even the being that stopped the attack. They're older, watching." She adjusted her translator implant. "They're not sending words. They're sending questions." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Questions? Like, are you still enslaved by instinct? Have you evolved beyond contracts? Have you earned the right to speak for yourselves?" That night, the sky split again, but this time there was no terror, no burning lance, no shadow, just a shape, familiar, and yet impossible, like a city folded into a sphere, orbiting realities rather than stars. 3 figures descended from the center, suspended in silver light. They were not biological, not entirely. More like harmonized consciousness sculpted into form. They floated toward the gathered crowd, past presidents, ambassadors, former warlords. Then, before everyone, one of the beings turned and spoke directly to Elias. "You rejected the contract." He stepped forward. "Yes." "Why?" "Because it wasn't real choice. It was obligation, dressed as unity. And if we offered you power now, what would you do?" He looked at Virea, then at the crowd. "Refuse it. Power without understanding just resets the cycle. We don't need rulers, we need responsibility." The being turned to Virea. "You disobeyed your people." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Would you do it again?" "I would start there next time." The second being blinked, like a ripple through light. "Then the test is complete." Suddenly, thousands of threads of light extended outward, from the being's core into the sky. Each thread connected to one of the old contracts, now long dissolved. This galaxy has remembered what it forgot. That obedience is not peace. That consent is not submission. You, both human and Zarellan, have done what your ancestors could not. You chose each other, not out of design, but out of defiance. Suddenly, the earth shook, not from violence, but from growth. Vast networks of hidden ancient satellites burst to life. Energy surged through long-dead orbital rings. Across Mars, Titan, and the colonies beyond, archives unlocked, blueprints, maps, gateways. The third species didn't just come to judge, they came to open the rest of the galaxy, but only to those who had proven one thing: they had grown beyond control. 10 years later, Virea stood inside the education dome orbiting New Europa. Hundreds of younglings, Zarellan, human, hybrid, even third species offshoots, sat watching a projection of the first accord being torn up, a symbol of the moment. History reset. "Can anyone tell me why the accord failed?" she asked. A small, human Zarellan boy raised his hand. "Because it made people follow rules instead of finding truth." Virea smiled. "Exactly." She tapped the display. "Now, who can tell me what replaced the accord?" Another child chimed. "In the Declaration of Sentient Will," she nodded. "No one owns your body. No one writes your fate. That's what Elias taught us. That's why you're all free." Somewhere beyond the edge of the known stars, Elias sat on a rocky outcrop, overlooking a new world's red ocean. He looked older now, wiser. Behind him, a new envoy stepped onto the rock. "Ambassador Elias," she said, "the final signatures are in. Even the Terran Nix colonies have ratified the third accord." He took a deep breath, nodded. "Good." The envoy hesitated. "And Virea?" He smiled faintly. "She's out there, where she always wanted to be, exploring a system no one mapped, teaching children no one thought could exist." Free! He stood up. We ended an empire. Then we built something better. That's enough. In the final archive, deep within the third species vault, a final entry logged itself. Species 0417, human. Status, past species 0089, Zurellan. Status, past legacy. Contract system, terminated sentient. Concord, initiated a final. Message appeared in gold across the ancient screen. They did not comply. They chose. Final scene. At the edge of the galaxy, where no charted star remained, a light blinked into life. Not alien, not human. Something new, born not from command, but from choice. Not from contract, but from understanding. And as its signal reached back through space, one phrase echoed through the stars. We are not bound, we are becoming. Final message. Lesson. Freedom is not the absence of rules. Freedom is the ability to choose your path, even when the path is uncertain. And in that uncertainty lies hope, truth, and the future of every sentient being.